Hi, and welcome to Northwest Book Talk, where we dive into the stories and storytellers shaping the literary landscape of the Pacific Northwest. Today, I'm joined by suspense and thriller author Jordan Fitch, whose novels blend mystery, identity, and high-stakes suspense. His first book, The Cardinal line, follows two strangers drawn together by a hidden genetic trait that threatens to upend their lives and history. And in his latest release, Nametown, Long-Buried Secrets unravel a small town's past, pushing its people and its peace to the brink. Jordan Fitch is a former U.S. Marine and electrical engineer. He brings a sharp eye and global experience to his page-turning fiction. So stay with us as we explore the inspiration behind his work, the threads that tie his characters together, and why the past is never really behind us. So welcome, Jordan, to the program.
Thank you, Patty.
So I can attest to the fact that Nametown is a fast-paced thriller, and it has this, it's all based on identities of people and how they conceive their identity and how that changes through the book. So tell me what brought you to write a book about like this.
So this story, kind of a convoluted set of factors that brought me to, the final book. There was a few different elements that I wanted to include in my second novel after I wrote The Cardinal line. I wanted it to take place in a small town, more of a confined setting, whereas The Cardinal line it spanned several states and was a much broader in scope. So I grew up in a small town in New Hampshire and, am familiar with, that type of life and, how much people know each other or think they know each other. So that's kind of where I had the setting, and I wanted a fast-paced story to have something of a clock. A thriller is supposed to have some sort of a clock. In this case, it's a vote that's an impending vote to rename the town. So the citizens have uncovered that the founder of this fictional town was someone who had done nefarious deeds 200 years ago. And as they approach their bicentennial, they're looking in history, they find it, and the protagonist, who is the town council president, proposes a rename of the vote. Now, you mentioned identity, the concept of identity, how people see themselves and how they react when their identity is challenged is something that helps to drive the story. So certainly when, the town that people are from, especially a small town where you hold that dear as most of us do, when that's challenged, by changing the actual name of the town, it, splinters the town into different factions and also eventually reveals other secrets, throughout the town and family and so forth. I think a big part of what we're seeing in our nation today is about identity, where there's very strong factions that are forming. So I feel that the book is timely in that it's kind of a microcosm of what's happening nationwide as people group in based on their beliefs and based on what they hold dear, and the concept of changing the name of a town that's reminiscent of tearing down statues and things that are happening that threaten the history and the heritage that we see. So that's part of it. I wanted to try to capture that spirit and write factions in the town that are kind of reminiscent of what we might see on a bigger scale, but also not try to be judgmental of those different groups, and kind of let the reader see themselves and maybe some of the different groups that are presented there, at the same time having a fast-paced thriller and mystery story plot line behind it, convoluted plot line. So that's something that I wanted to try to capture. And then there's a few different elements that went into choosing the location and the history that are kind of part of the story. So I could go into that more detail, but I don't want to explain the whole book right now. But yeah, so that's kind of what I wanted to kind of bring. I write thrillers and I like that type of story, but I also want to say something about the human condition. I feel like a good story has more than just a surface level plot. That's the type of book that I like to read, at least. So that's the type of book that I wanted to write, and I think I've done that with both with The Cardinal line and Nametown, where I'm saying a little more about the human condition on top of a fast paced plot with some sort of mystery that needs to be uncovered.
Yeah, so I read your book, and I have to say it is fast-paced because it's like every night I stayed up a little bit longer than I expected to trying to read it. I'm not trying to read it, loving to read it, but I want to explore a little bit how you develop. The plot is really good, but it's all like twists and turns and back and forth and putting all that together. So what was your technique or your strategy, and how'd you pull all that together?
So with this, I sort of had an end picture in mind before I started to write, and there's a few elements that I was using to kind of write it. So I'm very much on the pantser side of writing, which if the listeners aren't familiar, a plotter and pantser spectrum of writers. How much do you plot out ahead of time before you start writing, and how much do you write and kind of see where it goes? I'm definitely on the pantser side of it, as in writing by the seat of your pants. So I don't have a lot of it plotted out, but I had a few of the characters and a few of the elements. So as I wrote, I figured out different ways to have those different plot lines converge and have the have the different elements that drive that. So a lot of it came as I was writing, just like thinking about what works and what didn't. The location, which is I kept the state purposefully out of it, but it in like was the Northwest Territory of the U.S. 200 years ago, which is sort of the Western Pennsylvania, Indiana, Ohio area where there was a real life historical tragedy that happened that was the reason for renaming the town there. I don't think this is giving away too much, but one of the factions is more of a New Agey group, and they follow ley lines, and I use Google Earth to draw ley lines between some of the supposed spiritual centers in the world, and they crossed right in that area. So that gave me the area that the story was going to be, and then I found real life massacre that had happened, and that gave me and there was a person who escaped justice there and was never heard from again. So that's kind of where I pick up my story on the historical front. And again, it's not too much of a spoiler. It's all explained in the first chapter. So I had kind of the backstory and the history, and then from there I developed the characters, and I needed sort of small town characters. I needed a reason for the second protagonist, Piper Wells, for her to want to leave the town. She's younger, kind of sees the bigger life, and she sees her identity, at least in the beginning, as someone who's not destined for bigger things than that small town. And then all the other elements kind of came as I wrote. I had a few things. I had scene with a water tower at the end, and the water tower is on the cover of the book too. That I had that pictured very early on, so I kind of found ways to get to that in the end, and that kind of drove some of the plot line along the way.
So, writing as a pantser, was there any point in the story where you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do next? Did that happen, or did it just kind of flow?
Like, oh yeah, absolutely. I mean that's pretty regular, where I'll get to a point, and I wish I could give credit to the person I heard it from. It was at a author's talk some time ago, and the author was saying, like, I like to write myself into a corner and then find a way out of it, because if I don't know what's going to happen, then probably the reader's not going to know what's going to happen either. So I kind of like that you kind of get yourself in a spot and then like, okay, how do I get out of this? And it might take a day or a couple weeks of kind of thinking about it. I often get most of my ruminations while I'm running or hiking, just somewhere outside, exercising, biking. And so sometimes I'll just kind of get like a epiphany that will come at random times like that. Sometimes I need to deliberately think about it, like, okay, what are the options here? But yeah, there's certainly times that I am writing and I kind of reach a point that I don't know where it's going to go, and then I eventually find out what works.
So this is your second book. Was it easier or was it harder to write the second book?
It's definitely different. I feel with the first book, there's zero expectations, right? There's no, there's no history. You don't yet, as a debut novelist, you don't yet have a readership, and there's no expectations. So I think it's, from that aspect, it's just kind of open. I mean, it could be whatever, story that you want to tell is fine. And so that aspect, it's a little more freeing, but certainly the logistics and going through and, everything that you need to learn both for the craft side of it. And then of course for the marketing and publishing side is a whole different world. So there's a very steep learning curve all across the board on the first one. So in that aspect, the second one's easier because I know I've got the path and I have the people that I'm working with at the various stages of publication. So I think that aspect was definitely easier because I had the gears in place already. But for the story itself, now I have a readership, and I have a readership that expects a certain type of book, and the books are very different in a lot of senses, but they're still like fast paced. They all take place in a week and change. It has two POV characters that alternate back and forth that are trying to uncover something about their past while there are people looking for them. So there are some similarities there. So have kind of created that, at least with my first two books, as that type of story where racing against a clock or against some sort of adversary that they don't really understand. So that's kind of where I've kind of how I've written the first couple books, and so kind of being crafting to that standard that I've kind of set for myself makes it a little more challenging, but also more rewarding that I can kind of hone in on the type of novelist that I want to be. Yeah, I used beta readers for my second one as well, so it was good to get that feedback from readers who kind of knew what to expect in a Jordan Fitch book. So I had that as another element for Nametown that I didn't use for the Cardinal one.
So it sounds to me like you are planning to be a long-term writer. You're going to do more books, and so how did you get started wanting to write at all? Was it your early childhood? How was your author journey?
I have always been a big reader from the time I was young. I had started writing a couple novels, like fantasy type novels. I read a lot of fantasy and all sorts of books, but in like high school. So I had a couple fantasy novels that I had started just kind of for fun in high school that never really went anywhere. I didn't finish them. And then just life got in the way. So, my life path took me, to the Marine Corps, and then eventually married. Then I lived in New York for a while, and then we just moved out to the Pacific Northwest with my career, getting my electrical engineering degree and working through my career. So I hadn't really thought about that seriously until a few years ago. I was actually reading a popular sci-fi book on a plane, and I read through half of it on the plane flight, and I found myself starting to pick it apart and saying I would have done this differently. I would have done this differently. I'm like, I just started really looking at the craft of it. I'm like, maybe this is a point in my life where I can try. So I kind of shifted that, and it's not my main source of income by any means, as a new independent author, but it is a hugely rewarding community to be part of, and just having my work out there in the world and getting feedback from readers, and it's something that brings me a lot of joy and challenge and is incredibly rewarding, and definitely something that I want to continue throughout the rest of my life, wherever that takes me.
Yeah, I think that's great. So I want to go a little bit on your book marketing journey, because I noticed on your website that you're on Facebook, you're on TikTok, Instagram. Were you on LinkedIn? I'm not sure. But yeah. What platform works the best for you, or how do you weave them all together?
So I this is probably an area where I could hire a marketing expert, because it is it's kind of a hodgepodge of the different social media platforms, and some more successful than others. TikTok has actually been probably where I put most of my energy and have made a lot of great connections there. The book talk community on TikTok has been amazing, and I made a lot of friends, like fellow authors and other readers, and just had a lot of connections there. And just the mechanics of the platform where it's easy to go live and talk to people. And I also have a TikTok shop set up so I can sell signed books, and I include some extra bookmarks and some extra goodies that come with it. So that's kind of a fun thing that you can only get through the TikTok shop. You don't get if you're ordering from any of the major online retailers. So just having that personal connection and being able to get feedback and notes and share videos, and people do video reviews of books, and some of that exists in some capacity on some of the other platforms, but I just haven't really gotten the as much engagement on the others as I have on TikTok. I'd say Facebook is probably second to that, and then there's other ones that I engage in just to see what works, but it's kind of a sporadic effort to maintain relevant on all the social media platforms, because it does take a lot of time and energy to do that part of it. So it's more sporadic on my part where I do engage through that. But, I'm just looking for the connections, to other writers, to readers. So social media is, the main way to do that.
Has there been any marketing tactics that you tried that absolutely this is not what I want to do or is not working for me?
I dabbled in paid advertisements on Facebook and didn't really seem to get any traction there. So I know that a lot of authors have success with that. So it might be something that I spend some more time to understand it better and try again. But so far I tried that and it just hasn't really borne fruit for me. Yeah, I'd say that's the main one that hasn't really clicked for me.
Right. I'm trying to get into Facebook ads myself, and it's like a monster. Anyway, but let's see. What does your family think of you as being a writer?
Oh, they're incredibly supportive. I have a wife and 2 grade school children, and my wife, she reads twice as many books as I do. So she's my first and most important critic, and she's been really supportive, and she's part of a couple book clubs in the area. So, getting my books into the book clubs is a big, a great engagement part there. And she's, helps with some of the marketing, and, if we're out in public and, the topic comes up, she's quicker than I am to bring up, oh, Jordan's a writer, and I try to get more engagement that way. I guess I'm just more humble by nature. I just, I really don't like the self-promotion part of it, so it's not something that I push, but she's good with that. And my parents are super supportive, other family and friends, they've all really liked what I've done, and they've been really supportive with purchasing, talking about it, leaving reviews, all the, stuff that's a big help for independent writers.
So have you been surprised at all in how your books were received? Was that encouraging for you?
Oh, certainly. Yeah. With the Cardinal line, I mean, that's, a debut, and, I think it was a pretty fun, interesting story. It's, one that I would enjoy reading and do enjoy reading. But, until you get feedback from people, outside of the family and friend circle, it's hard to really know. And I got a lot of people who just really, really liked it. People said that, they don't read frequently. There's a lot of books that they do not finish, they DNF. And then when they read the Cardinal line, they just loved it, had a lot of questions. There's, a couple book clubs in the area where I didn't know the people at the time. So, getting to answer questions, and then, people meeting at some of the book festivals and author fairs. And so getting that feedback from people who, don't have a stake in it is super meaningful and encouraging. I mean, I like to think that if the first book was not enjoyed by a lot of people, I still would continue writing, because I enjoy that process of it. That I'm not going to let that stop me. But it's certainly a big boost when it's gotten such a positive reaction with the Cardinal line. And Nametown's only been out for a few weeks now, so I know not many people have read it yet, but a lot of people have picked it up. So getting positive feedback from that will help for the motivation for continuing. But also, it's not something that I need to continue, because it's part of my creative journey is that I enjoy, regardless of what other people think of it.
Yeah. So, but I think they are great. I think they're very good. Well, I've only read the one, but I will read the other. But anyway, I really love it. So, where are you having the best success in selling your books? You're on Amazon. Are you on other book outlets?
Yeah. So it's on Ingram Spark, which is the distributor for libraries and independent bookstores. So sold several through those. mostly like hitting the pavement, going around to local bookstores and asking them to pick it up. And in most cases they do, which I'm grateful for. Then they sell out and go back and buy more. So that's been, I think probably Amazon overall has been more than any other sales platform, but like through Barnes and Noble and other retailers who can get it through the non-Amazon platform through Ingram Spark. But I'd say in-person sales at signing events and book festivals and book fairs has been huge as well. Probably sold almost as many through them as I have, through the online retailers. So that's and those are great experiences, as you know, where you get to
Right.
talk to readers and sign books and meet them and talk to them and answer questions in person. That's been huge for me, and I really appreciate the opportunities when those come up.
What is your day like for writing? Do you write every single day, weekends, mornings, evenings? What's your writing lifestyle?
So that I am this is one of the areas where there's a lot of advice out there for write every day, have a set schedule, and I think I would probably benefit from that, but that's advice that I do not follow. I kind of write when I have the energy and when the time's right, and focused on the work. So I like fit it in where I can with waking up in the morning, staying up at night on the weekends. I have a full-time job and family obligations and all that, which are all great. But I kind of fit it in where it works and at the times that work for me. So that's definitely not advice for any other aspiring writers out there, because that's goes contrary to what most people say, where you have to set aside a time. And again, I think I would benefit from that. I just haven't put that practice into my life yet. So it's more, when it works well for me.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm finding out, is that the advice that works for everybody doesn't always work for me. I mean,
Right.
just totally doesn't. But how long did it take you to write your first book, and then how long your second, and are you starting on a third?
So I think the timeline for both was roughly the same. So, from conception to when I really start in earnest writing the first draft, it's kind of like working through notes and thinking about it. It's like, 3, 4, 5 months, and then about 9 to 12 months of writing it. Usually the first draft, about half of that, and then going back through and reworking the draft. So about an 18-month process from conception to publication, and that was with the first two. And yes, I am working through. I'm at the sort of like planning, conceptualize phase for the next one. My plans are for the next one to be a series. So these two, the first two, the Cardinal Line and the Name Town, are standalone, and then I wanted to do a series. So I have a concept for that for at least 3 books, but I haven't really started the first draft in earnest yet. I'm still kind of working through the notes and taking some stabs at the first chapter. But yeah, so it's about an 18-month.
Okay, that's pretty darn good, I think. I've had some people, and I would be probably right up there. They took 10 years to get their first book out, just because it starts and it keeps going. So this is just a personal question myself. So you were in the Marines, and I want to know, coming from a small town and then going into the Marines, do you feel that military life, kind of the discipline there, kind of helped you to maybe stay focused on something like writing?
Perhaps, yeah. So it certainly helps with a lot when you overcoming obstacles. That's a big part of the writing journey. Adapting where things aren't what you expect, and the discipline certainly helps. And also just the broad view from traveling around the world and seeing different people and cultures. Just that breadth of exposure really helps, I think, as I'm writing, just to have different perspectives that I can pull on, different characters and different insights that I've been able to get from that experience, that I'm sure in some ways influence how I write and what I write about. The Cardinal Line has a little bit of a military flashback to it, So having that experience kind of fed that, but besides that, there's really not much in Nametown that draws directly from that experience, but just the general exposure to more cultures and people, I think is beneficial for anybody, regardless of what they do with that information, that experience.
Yeah, because when you say at one point that your book is like a microcosm of a small town and how it can be applied to a larger perspective, whole society. And that's what I see. If you'd always been small town and never got outside of that maybe you wouldn't bring that connection so much, that life in this small town is just a small part of life everywhere.
Sure, yeah. And someone is born and raised and stays in a certain area. I don't want to say that having a myopic worldview is bad, because there's a lot of that can be said about really understanding where you're from and that singular experience. But I think it's definitely beneficial to be exposed to more cultures and people to better understand your own, or to change your own as people travel around. I just love travel. That's something our family does whenever we get the opportunity. It's just a great experience to broaden your view, and I find a lot of value in that.
Okay, so I want to finish with the last question is, your book is, at least it sounds like it's very professionally edited. I mean, it's smooth, it's easy to read, it's gripping, everything works. Like, did you have an editor, or is this all yourself?
It's all myself and the beta readers. Yep. So for both the Cardinal line and Nametown, I self-edited. So there's software that you can use. It'll catch the obvious grammatical typos and all that. But I just I do a careful line by line, a couple passes as I reach the publication stage. And yeah, I'm sure there's still a few areas here or there that I missed or that I didn't get caught, but overall, like even if they're professionally edited books, I mean, it's not hard to find typos in a lot of what's done in the traditional publishing world as well. So I know that's another area where they say definitely hire an editor, hire a line editor, hire a copy editor, hire developmental editor. There's like 3 different roles that are all part of many writing processes, but that all costs a lot of money, and I'll consider that for future books. But at this point, I'm happy with the product that I've been able to do, with the tools that I have and the people that I'm working with.
Oh yeah, I'm impressed, because especially I wasn't thinking so much about the grammar and the thingy. I was thinking about the developmental, the whole carry through from beginning to end and how it all weaves together. And sometimes there can be holes where people don't say like, what happened to this person, or whatever. And I didn't find that in the book. But so I think you're doing amazing. I think you can just keep going with how you're doing and you'll end up just fine. But so Jordan, thank you for sharing your book writing journey with us. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person at the book fair in July, and I just wish you all the best success.
Yeah, thank you so much, Patty. It's been a great conversation. Really appreciate you having me on.
That wraps up our conversation with Jordan Fitch, author of The Cardinal Line and Nametown. If you enjoy thrillers with deep questions about identity, science, and the secrets we inherit, Jordan's books are ones to explore. Thanks for tuning in to Northwest Book Talk. Be sure to visit northwestbooktalk.com for past episodes, author spotlights, and more. Until next time, keep reading, keep exploring, and keep supporting local authors.